Hello, and welcome to the pre-recorded Mayoral Candidate Forum. I'm Sarah Mayocker, Branch Manager of Sharpsburg Community Library, and I acted as moderator. Sharpsburg Community Library is a branch of Cooper-Siegel Community Library, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I'm neither a resident nor employee of the Borough of Sharpsburg, and this event was planned solely by me. Due to an inability to find a date and time that worked for both candidates, I met with each of the candidates on Zoom earlier this week. I met one-on-one with Mr. Simbari on Tuesday, May 11th, and with Ms. Reno on Wednesday, May 12th. I then compiled the footage from both of those sessions so each candidate's response to the same question follows each other in sequence. No content was edited. This video is available to watch on YouTube, and any resident without computer or internet access will be able to watch it at the library during regular operating hours. The guidelines were slightly different since this was an event that did not happen live or with simultaneous responses from the candidates. Candidates were each given 2 minutes to introduce themselves, during which they stated their name and gave a short speech about why they are running for their position and any related previous experience. For the Q&A portion, candidates received 1 minute, 30 seconds to respond. And at the end, they received 2 minutes to tell voters why they should vote for them. In the introduction, we gave each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And this sequence will be going in alphabetical order by last name, beginning with Ms. Reno. Please state your name as it appears on the ballot, your political affiliation, if it has not always been Democrat, and tell us why you are running for mayor now and about any related previous experience.
Thank you, Sarah, for organizing this whole thing, not just for the mayoral candidates, but for all the candidates locally. I know what a huge undertaking that is, so I appreciate that. Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Reno. I am the current council president for Sharpsburg Borough. I've been in that position since 2018 when I was unanimously elected by my fellow council people, and again, unanimously elected 2 years ago to continue serving in that way, or a year ago. I moved to this town a little over 8 years ago and just fell in love with it. So I've started doing all sorts of volunteer projects that back then, going to council meetings when I was the only person sitting in the audience. A seat opened up. I applied for it and nobody else did. And that's how I first got involved with the borough as a council person. And I've just completely fallen into the work. It is the most meaningful thing I've been able to do in my life working here. I also started a nonprofit during this time. It's called Sharpsburg Neighborhood Organization, and that's what I do for my day job now. Everything from organizing tree plantings to bringing money for art projects in. And now we're working on some home energy efficiency things, gardening, small business things, all sorts of stuff. So it has been an immense pleasure to work in this borough. I've met so many people here and have so many friends here and finally have a home, which is what I consider this community very much my home. I'm attending grad school in a master's program for sustainability with a focus in sustainable urban planning. I serve on many nonprofit boards within Sharpsburg and also outside of Sharpsburg, and it would be a great honor to be your next mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Joseph Simbari. That's the way my name will appear on your ballot. Although no one calls me Joseph, I pretty much go by Joe. I'm running for council because I think there's a need. You know, I think that the office of mayor, you know, we had a mayor in Richard Panza, and then after that, I think our current mayor has been basically just kind of using the office as a spotlight for himself in furthering his agenda. And as now we see, he's running for district magistrate after completing just one term as mayor. So I'm looking to kind of restore and bring back the office of mayor. The office of mayor, there's a lot of conversation about a lot of topics that the office of mayor really doesn't have any control over. The office of mayor can suggest a lot of things, everything. But as far as what the mayor actually has control over, it's a lot more limited, I think, than people realize. The mayor's in charge of the police force. That's the major role of the mayor. The mayor in states of emergency declares a state of emergency, and so we need preparedness in that regards. I'm wrapping up my 4th year as being on council, and I think that experience, the experience that I've had on council, as far as being extremely directly involved with purchasing of property for our Department of Public Works, selling of property, getting into heated arguments with other people on council, trying to get more money for the taxpayers of Sharpsburg, none of which was on open council floor. That was all in the executive sessions, but nevertheless, it happened. So I'm looking forward to being your mayor. That's all I want to do. I'm not looking to seek any office beyond that. I'm not looking for a career in politics. I'm not looking for a paid position. That's pretty much that's what I'm all about.
Thank you. For the question and answer section, each of you will have 1 minute, 30 seconds to respond to the question. I realize that does not give much time to get into specifics, so please be as clear and as concise as possible in that allotted 1 minute, 30-second time frame. As a reminder, we ask that your response focus on your plan, your opinion, or your past action, not those of your rival candidate. I will note before the question if it comes from the submission form or if I drafted it myself. So we'll be starting with the topic of your experience on council, since both you and Ms. Reno are both current council members. So our first question is asking, and this is from the forum submission, for you to describe 1 or 2 policies that you introduced during your time on council and the impact on the community of those policies. So in the interest of time, just choose the 1 or 2 that you're most proud of or that you feel have had the most impact. So you have 1 minute, 30 seconds to answer that.
So actual introduction of policies in the last 3.5 years that I've been, I haven't introduced any type of legislation or policies, but the things that I'm proudest of are making sure that this borough got every dime out of the riverfront property that we sold by my own hand, 100% by my own hand. We got $250,000 more for the riverfront property than we would have had I not been on council. That's a fact. Unfortunately, it wasn't on a public floor. It was an executive session, but I had a fight. I had a fight to get you, the taxpayers, an extra $250,000, and we got it. The other thing was in the purchase of the property that we purchased, and I was able to save single-handedly, me, there was no one else with me, but the borough manager and myself, and we negotiated a deal for the purchase of the property at 19th Street, in which I saved the taxpayers over $100,000. These are things that you can't contest them. Those are facts. And that's what I'm most proud of. So while maybe I didn't introduce any type of legislation or policies, I was involved in some of the most serious transactions that this borough's ever seen in the last 50 years, and I'm proud of that.
That is a tough question to answer in 1 minute and 30 seconds, but one thing that I'm most proud of is my Complete Streets related work here. The Completes resolution I passed in 2017, and it really speaks to the need of all sorts of people using our streets and sidewalks to be able to get around safely. And so in practice, what that looks like is expanding the use of crosswalks, making the curb cuts and crosswalk entry points ADA compliant. So for people with wheelchairs, people using walkers, people pushing strollers can all get around more safely. That's been a big priority of mine because I like to sit in that sweet spot and do work and make progress on areas that maybe aren't as contentious, but we can all agree on and make real progress on. So something like being able to walk or bike or push your stroller around safely in town, that's huge to me. So paving sidewalks, getting the sidewalks fixed up now that are currently broken up, those things are a big passion of mine, and same with trail access and everything else related to being able to get safely around town.
The second question in this topic also comes from the forum submission, and they ask, what policies do you intend to advocate for if elected mayor? Do you have a specific area of focus?
Again, I think the mayor has a very specific order to lead the police department to work with the chief and the officers to maintain safety. So that's, of course, going to be paramount to what I'm working on. I think in terms of specific policies to that end, the law enforcement assisted diversion work that I've been spearheading for the past year on council is something that I'm going to continue to build on, advocate for, and work with our department regardless of what happens in the election. This is critical because we ask our police department to do so much. We ask our officers to do so much, to be a social worker, an animal abuse expert, the public safety face, an ambassador to the community. We ask them to do so much, and we don't give them enough. So I want to instill more resources like that of a social worker that can take some of that burden off and ultimately improve recidivism rates so people aren't kind of getting into this revolving door with our police department and just make us all safer. There are so many important things to tackle, and that's why I think the mayor, in addition to the police work, has the opportunity to really amplify the voices of the community, get out there and talk to every single person, figure it out what it is that they care about, and then do the research to figure out what's good to make that progress happen.
So, I mean, obviously, what will I be an advocate for? I mean, I think that kind of plays out as we go through time. As far as right now, is there any issue that's in front of council that I would continue to advocate for? I think there's a lot of things, I guess, and again, the mayor can suggest and make suggestions for things, but at the end of the day, I mean, your council is going to ultimately make those decisions. So further education, continuing education of our police department, that's extremely important. Getting the police the resources that they need to adequately cover a call. Again, this falls under the office of mayor, and it's something that's extremely important. Having the police being trained for dealing with various types of people that we have, people with mental disabilities, autism. There's just the amount of characters that a police officer can encounter. It's endless, and so it is the best to be equipped. If we can get social services involved early in a lot of matters, I think at the end of the day, we're all better for that. If we can actually help people as opposed to dictate to people, dictate laws, dictate rules, but actually help people and be proactive in that help.
Time. Thank you.
That's big on my list as far as things that I'll be advocating for.
One of the big responsibilities of mayor, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, is to oversee the police force. So these next series of questions will all relate to police community relations and the mayor's role in that. So this is from the form submission. And the question is, do you support a police department merger with the other tri-borough communities or any other nearby municipalities? Why or why not?
Well, 4 years ago, when I first was on council, the very, very first thing that our current mayor did was explore merging of the police departments. And the state came in and did a study. And the state found, after a intense study, that it wasn't feasible at this time for a merger. So, at this time, regardless of what maybe people would want, it's been studied and it's been found that it's not feasible. Now when you say tri-borough communities, now we're going in the other direction with Etna Millville, and I don't see how a merger with those police departments would ever benefit Sharpsburg. So down the road, the only thing that's constant is change. Okay, so where are we today? Today, it's not feasible for us to merge with anyone. Down the road, would it be feasible? It may be. I don't see anything feasible with any other departments that aren't a part of our district being in our school district, which is also our magistrate district. I think that would be most beneficial to us if we ever did look at merging. But as far as going in the other direction, as far as Etna Millville, I don't know right now if I see that as a benefit. But in those departments could possibly look at their area and their district as far as Millville, Etna, Reserve, Shaler is being a viable option. But I think we need to look at Sharpsburg and Upriver if there would be a merger. But again, the state has determined that it's not feasible at this time.
I think shared services in general in a government context is an important thing to look at, especially in a county like Allegheny County, where we sit. For example, looking at fire departments, we have almost 130 unique volunteer fire departments, I think, to go along with all the municipalities. We have more fire engines and trucks than New York City, despite having a much smaller population. So in looking at things like sustainably being able to offer these services to municipalities, I think looking at mergers is important as a consideration financially, but we can't let that happen at the expense of service, of course. So anything that, any sort of merger that would happen would have to be a long process with a lot of public input, and really focusing on cost savings, professionalization of the department. What resources can we bring in as a result of saving that money? So I don't claim to be an expert on this topic, but I'd want to do more research on it and be able to make a good decision that doesn't sacrifice the service we're able to give.
The second question on this topic: if you are elected, how do you plan to oversee the police department? How will you work with the police department and council to ensure the continued safety and security of residents?
That is a great question. I would say collaboratively is the best word to describe how I'd want to lead the police department. I have great faith not just in our police chief, but in our officers. I say this like a broken record pretty much at every council meeting because we get so much positive feedback from the community about interactions they've had with our police officers. I'm constantly impressed by their commitment to equity and building community relationships and trust. So I trust them, and they're the ones with the boots on the ground talking to people and interacting with people, and they understand the community better than I do right now with who they're talking to. So I would want to trust them, hear what they need, and advocate for that to council, because council really does control the funding mechanism, the budget for the police department. But I'm used to keeping in touch with the officers, with the chief, with the mayor now, and I'd want to continue that.
As I've said previously, and in the literature that I've passed out explaining myself, and that is, I do believe that we need to invest in our police, not take away funds from the police department, but invest in our police. And so, again, as you move forward, things are fluid and needs also change. And so, I would fully support. Anything that the chief felt that his police department needed, I would definitely have his back and support that. We are limited by a budget. Sharpsburg has approximately a $3 million budget, and our goal, and we've been able to maintain that goal, is not to raise taxes and to still work and live within the means of that budget, and we've been able to do that. But that also means that sometimes you can't do everything that you want to do. So, obviously, we want to have our police equipped with the best and most state-of-the-art equipment. That's not always possible. Okay, so we have to live within a budget. And again, we have been doing that, and we've maintained a lid on the taxes. And so continuing with that, we may have a wish list of things in a way of equipment, the newest equipment, the newest police cruisers, things like that. But we may not be able to do everything all the time because we are limited into within a $3 million budget for the entire borough. So it's a balancing act, and we've been doing a good job for it, but we have to continue that. But I think a lot of the needs moving forward
time, unfortunately,
will reveal themselves as we move forward.
How do you plan to build relationships between the residents of the borough and the police department?
Now that's key right there, man. And that is the key to a successful police department, and a police department that's that you're not reading about in the newspaper. But when your residents know the police, and when the police know the residents, then you have a mutual respect between those two entities, and that is when we have success, because then we are less likely to disrespect each other. The police disrespecting the citizens disrespecting the police. And so my concern and my efforts would be to continue those two entities getting to know each other better. And that's involved with community events, having our police visible at community events, interacting with the residents, with the children, with the seniors, with all residents. That's the key, is everybody knowing each other, not being afraid of each other, because then when you're not afraid, when you actually know somebody, then and respect them, then you seek their help. In seeking their help, when they show up, there's always going to be some element of unexpectedness, but at least it's reduced when you're showing up and you know who you're showing up for or with. And so that is truly the key to success. And I think if you look across the country and all the things that have happened and it went wrong, it was when the police did not know who they were calling on, who they were showing up for, and vice versa. And so we eliminate that. We eliminate, I believe, all problems.
Another good question. And a tough one, because like I said, we ask the police to do so much. We ask them to put themselves in danger every day. They don't know what they're getting into with any given day. But then we also expect them to be this public relations face of the department. And so it's a tall order, but just having them out there, that presence in the community, where it's not just you only see the police when there's a problem, but you see the police when we are celebrating as a community. You see the police at special occasions where we are, celebrating the new school year or having a holiday celebration. They are not just these anonymous uniforms, they are people, and we know them and we care about them, and they're out there in the community participating just like the rest of us.
So moving on to the next topic. All right, sorry. So this is a question from the forum submission, and they ask, what will you do to bridge the gap between folks who have lived in Sharpsburg their entire lives and those who are new to the neighborhood? How will you work to ensure that all voices are given equal weight when working through the issues?
So I've been knocking on a lot of doors, not just this year, but for a variety of occasions and causes over my time here. And universally, these issues keep coming up. Like, people want to be able to walk safely from one place to another. People want to be able to not have their basement flooded up to their kneecaps with raw sewage, for example. And people want community events. People want things for kids to do. And that, again, is where I like to work and where I think we have a lot of progress potential to be made. Hosting more community events. This is something I've started doing since the year I moved here. Just giving people opportunities to meet and mingle and develop these relationships, develop that trust. I hear so often from longer term residents who just absolutely miss the time when everybody knew everybody else in town. And to an extent, that's still a really big strength of Sharpsburg's. But I want to keep doing the work to get people in the same room talking about issues they care about, not in a combative way, but in a constructive way, in a way that builds trust and mutual understanding.
I mean, that just has to do with listening. Listening to everybody and not just listening to the loudest voice in the room. There's that old expression, a squeaky wheel gets the grease, but everybody needs to be heard. And so, if any one group is kind of hogging the limelight, so to speak, that's not fair, maybe to the older folks. And then the other thing is almost the exact same answer or same situation as police with the residents. Well, the old and the new need to interact with each other. And so hopefully through community events, you can get these folks knowing each other, interacting with each other, and respecting each other. And then, hopefully not having any ill will towards each other or animosity towards each other. But the first part of that is just listening to everybody. You can't let yourself get pulled in to just hearing the loudest voice. You do have to listen. The community is made up of many people, and you need to listen to many people to be effective as a leader.
So following on with that, this next question is from the form submission. It relates to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the question is, what will you do as mayor to recruit and retain diverse candidates for the Sharpsburg Police Department to better reflect the residents of the borough?
So in hiring of police, which is a tough job right now. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's not a lot of folks beating the doors down to be a police officer. As far as going out of our way to bring in people that haven't applied, I mean, you have to apply for the job first to be considered. And so, I mean, we are limited to who applies, and that's a big part of it. But my thoughts are you hire the best candidate, regardless of their situation, whether they're a female or a male, or regardless of their race. Whoever's the best person for the job, that's who gets the job. And again, we're limited to who applies. I mean, obviously, we put it out there that we're looking and we're hiring. We put it out there as many places as we, that's feasible. I mean, again, that costs money as well, advertising for a job. You do the best you can. And, those folks that are looking for police jobs, they have their antennas out and they're looking, so, the question is limited to who applies. And again, you can't answer that question prematurely before you actually do it. I mean, so, would I discriminate against anybody because of a gender or a race? Absolutely not.
This is a great question, an interesting question. Ultimately, it comes down to who is coming through the police academy. So in looking at even the numbers alone are pretty low on people coming through the police academy right now and graduating and then moving on to testing for the positions in the police department. So I think supporting community-based programs that get more people involved from a younger age and understanding that maybe they do have a future as a police officer. There's not just one type of community police officer that's out there. And if you aren't that exact type of person, then you shouldn't even pursue policing. I think it comes back to how hard it is to be a police officer today, especially, and navigating those conflicts and still being able to go to work every day and face the dangers that are inherent in that position. So I think really changing that whole culture from the get-go about what a police officer does, looks like, is imperative. And to the extent that I can do that by working with the Camp Cadet program to try to get more people from Sharpsburg involved in that in a diverse way, that's what I'd want to do.
Moving on to the topic of the environment, we have two questions in this category. Again, both are from the form submission. And the first question is, do you support a borough-wide recycling program? How would you implement it, and why or why not do you support that?
So I do support a borough-wide curbside recycling pickup program. There are some caveats there, and mostly it's related to the international recycling market, which crashed a couple of years ago in a way that the borough used to have a relatively affordable community recycling dumpster down at the borough building that people could use. And then overnight, Waste Management contacted us and said, instead of this nominal fee you've been paying, it's actually going to be $5,000 a month. And while we're doing pretty well with the borough finances, we didn't have an extra $60,000 sitting around for that. So I do support curbside recycling. I think it's important. And I think it's beyond time for us to do that, but I also look at models like what's been explored recently by O'Hara, Aspinwall, and Blanox, where they are going to be handling their own municipal glass recycling. And I see something like that as something that we should aspire to either get involved with through the existing partnership that's just started, or look at our own model in that vein, because even if we do institute curbside recycling, something like glass might still not be included in that because it's not as profitable for them. So that's something we definitely need to work on, and I'm happy to do that and eager to do it.
So again, we enter into that area that's beyond the scope of the mayor. I mean, as far as policies with recycling, the mayor doesn't have any, any powers to enact any policies for that. Okay, that's a council thing. And to this point, every time that the issue has been brought up in front of council, at least in the last 4 years, we go back to we have a budget, and we're trying to keep a lid on taxes and not raise them. And so we've been limited by our budget, and so nothing's really been done beyond what we in a way. I think there have been paper bins and whatnot, and even those had to go away again because of budget. But as far as the mayor, am I for recycling? Absolutely, I'm for recycling. Who is it? I mean, reducing our carbon footprint and doing whatever we can. I mean, I currently drive an electric hybrid vehicle that reduces emissions by 80% of a normal gas-powered vehicle. That's huge. Okay, so I live that. I do that. That's what I do in my daily life. I don't talk about it. I'm not talking about studying it. I do it. Okay. As far as recycling for the borough goes and things like that, again, we're working within a budget, and we can solve all the problems, okay, and do everything by just raising taxes and spending a whole bunch of money that we don't have. I don't think that that's what the citizens of Sharpsburg want, and so things come within the means that we are trying to live within. And I'm not against recycling. I'm all for it. Glass, paper, aluminum, but we have to figure out a way that it's not going to be a burden or too much of a financial burden on every citizen in Sharpsburg.
Our other question on this topic is, what are the most important policies or actions you would promote for environmental progress as mayor? Of course, we recognize that that's not immediately a role of mayor, but if there's a particular way you would try to shepherd things toward council, speak to that.
Well, a lot of things that affect the environment are maybe bigger than Sharpsburg. Sharpsburg, we don't have like a large industrial manufacturing region within our 0.75 square miles that we need to regulate as far as pollution, whether it be air pollution or water pollution or whatever. We don't have that within our borough. So that's not an issue. Now, air quality obviously affects us as residents, but I don't know how much power we have over it. That's more of, I think, a county and a state thing. And so we could be advocates for those things with our state legislators, our U.S. legislators, as far as rallying the residents to be active in that regards as advocates. But again, as far as what we can do, the other thing is, individuals have to kind of take, maybe some responsibility themselves and do things, you need to help the situation out. It's not so much the government regulating and forcing people to do things as it is for people to just do them. I mentioned earlier about me with the electric car. It's the same thing with recycling. Again, unless we want to blow the lid off of taxes, it's tough for us to be everything to everybody. But it's not hard for an individual to do their individual part as a responsible citizen.
So this is obviously, as a sustainability student here, been a a passion of mine, the environmental work. And while legally the mayor has certain things that they are required to focus on and need to focus on and be diligent about, the mayor also has a powerful platform to be able to use in terms of bringing awareness to issues that residents are facing. So on the issue of the environment, I think greenhouse gas emissions in this town, we've recently done an inventory thanks to a grant from the Department of Environmental Protection that I connected us with. And we found out that most of our greenhouse gas emissions, our air pollution, is coming from vehicular traffic. And some of this is because of Main Street, some of it is because of the trains, a lot of it is because of Route 28. So that's obviously not something we can directly address, but we can make it more walkable here. We can improve the air quality by continuing to plant more trees. That's something that's important to me. I would recommend that the borough adopt the Sharpsburg Climate Action Plan draft that I introduced last month. And that's on the website now for anybody who wants to check that out on the borough's website. And also, of course, flooding policy. I've got 20 seconds to get into it, but I could talk about it for 20 days. The community rating system through the National Flood Insurance Program has the opportunity for us to be more prepared and better protected against flooding, while also reducing flood insurance rates by 5, 10, 15% across the entirety of town. So that is another passion of mine.
All right, we will pivot to the topic of opportunity. We have one question on this topic, also from the form submission, and is how will you create more education and job opportunities within the borough?
Thank you for this question. I actually worked, before I got into the Sharpsburg business, I worked in workforce development and youth programming for kids aging out of the foster care system. So this is a passion, a near and dear to my heart topic. In Sharpsburg, looking at the census data, which I do pretty often for my full-time job, we know that we have lower rates of education here in Sharpsburg and also higher rates of poverty and higher rates of unemployment than in a lot of similar communities around the county. So this is an issue for us. It's something that needs to be solved. I think there is such a rich existing ecosystem of nonprofit service providers in Sharpsburg, from Volunteers of America to Roots of Faith to the library, of course, and many more. We have all these great organizations with smart, knowledgeable staff that have trusting relationships with people. So in my mind, it's how do we get more resources to them so that they can have more staff people, more program offerings? How do we get up communication so more people out there who need these services can get down and take advantage of the services? And with my background in media and professional communications and corporate and community relations and grant writing, this is what I do. This is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. So being able to do that for Sharpsburg is what I have been doing and what I want to continue to do for people here who need those services.
So all we can do in that, and again, this is look into your government to solve your problems. And sometimes the government can't solve your problems. But what we can do is be a government-friendly community to potential businesses that maybe want to make their home in Sharpsburg. And so again, as the mayor, more of as an ambassador to the outside world to attract businesses to Sharpsburg, that would be all, the control of the mayor would be, to invite folks to look at us, look at our location. We're 6 miles from downtown Pittsburgh. We're right up the Allegheny. So we do have a nice convenient location. R47, not really sure. They really have no exact concrete plans, 100% exact. I know they were talking about office space. I think that's changed since COVID. I don't think a lot of people are building new office buildings and whatnot. And so, from an employment standpoint, as far as new businesses coming to Sharpsburg and existing locations, we have some empty storefronts, and we need to, invite some folks in. One of the things that the city of Pittsburgh has used that it's a little bit harder for us to use is tax abatement. And tax abatement coming in, we have to deal with the Fox Chapel School District with that. They've not been cooperative with that suggestion of tax abatement, but it's definitely worked in the city. And, so that would maybe be one thing as the mayor that I would try to advocate for, and that is getting our school district maybe to be a little bit more of a partner of Sharpsburg, where we could offer maybe some tax incentives for new businesses to show up in Sharpsburg, and then in turn we would have employment to those new businesses.
All right. Since we mentioned Riverfront 47, I will skip to that topic specifically. We got one question on the submission regarding Riverfront 47. Originally, the Riverfront 47 proposal called for office buildings, but as you noted yourself, the pandemic has changed the need for office space. What will you do if the developers try to place more than the original 750 housing units in town, or if they won't develop for mixed income?
Yeah, right. And so there's more questions than answers with R47, and whether they could even do the units you just mentioned from a residential standpoint. I think the other thing here's what everybody has to realize about R47, and that is they need to get started. Their first order of business is infrastructure. If you can't get to a development, you don't have a development. And right now, that's the biggest thing. People saying, "What's going on? What's going on?" Well, right now, nothing's going on. And they need to figure out the entrance, the main entrance being at 19th Street, working with the railroad, working with the state government as far as getting that tunnel refurbished, and then building a shoreline road that's going to go through the development. That's step number one. And then after that, we'll see what happens. I'm not looking right now to say I'm going to be saying no to this if they do this. Hey, I'm open to listening and hearing what their alternative plans are first. And I'm here to work with that group, not work against them. But nevertheless, they still need to be respectful of us and our existing community. And right now, the biggest debate, I would say the biggest debate right now is the entrance at 19th Street and a stoplight there, and whether that's necessary or not. Right now, I don't feel that it is, and I don't feel that eliminating parking is necessary to put that light in. And I have expressed, that if there's any parking taking away from that neighborhood, that it's replaced, and that's the only way that that'll ever work. But we can't remove any more parking. I think we've already made a little bit of a mess of things down in our lower part of Main Street, the quote unquote the business district, and so I don't think we can afford to be eliminating any more parking spaces anywhere in town, especially on Main Street.
So this is obviously a huge topic for Sharpsburg. It's almost, I think, 12% of our total acreage in town. So this is a huge deal. Luckily, no plans are set in stone yet about what the master plan for that development will look like, especially amid the changing economic conditions of our time right now. But first and foremost, anything that's done, any master plan that's approved, I'm not going to approve it and I'm not going to advocate it. And in fact, I will fight against it if it does not involve serious community engagement, in-person meetings, online opportunities for feedback. It can't just be a one meeting that nobody can attend and then it's over. We have to have community feedback and we have to have community buy-in. So it can't just be enough to hear the feedback and do nothing with it. We have to hear the feedback and make sure it's incorporated into the development. In terms of specifics, non-negotiables, I think stormwater infrastructure, green space, absolutely necessary. We don't have enough, and this is a great opportunity to put more in. Trail access to the riverfront trail that extends all the way up to Erie, all the way down to DC and downtown, of course, that's important. And mixed income housing for sure is something that I've said from day one. It needs to be a part of this or I will not support it. So mixed income, mixed age, senior housing that is affordable, that's critical.
Following on that, we have a question about affordability, again, from the form submission. With all of the new and trendy businesses that have opened in town in the last several years, we have seen a tremendous increase in both rents and home prices. What plans would you develop to help the community retain affordability while still welcoming new businesses to the borough?
Thank you for this question. It's a huge issue. When I first moved here, there were like 120 vacant blighted houses, and now I think we're down to fewer than a dozen. And On one hand, that's great. Property values are going up. That's really handy for a lot of people who own their homes and want to sell them. But for seniors on a fixed income who are staring down the possibility of a reassessment, and especially for renters who are seeing their rents sometimes double from year to year, that's unacceptable. And it's not the kind of community we want to live in. Unfortunately, in Pennsylvania, rent control laws are banned by law. So that's something that we are faced with, and we have to get creative about different ways to handle this problem that don't involve that, though we can advocate and should advocate for changes to that state law. Some things that I've been working on are being an active member of the Tricog Land Bank. And I encourage anybody to reach out to me to read more about this or learn more about this, and I'll talk your ear off about it. But I'm the Sharpsburg representative to the Tricog Land Bank, which takes homes and then puts them into this land bank where people can then get them back on the tax rolls. But more specifically, in my role as advocating from Sharpsburg's behalf, we've worked out a new partnership with the City of Bridges Community Land Trust, which keeps housing permanently affordable when it's acquired and put into this portfolio. So people can still own the house and get 3 to 5% profit when they sell it, but because of a land lease, they can't sell it for $300,000 when they got it for $65,000, for example.
That is time, unfortunately.
And again, it's that's beyond the scope of the office of mayor. It would just be my opinion, and forwarding that opinion to council. And people need to realize that. I mean, there's a lot of things being asked of me that are beyond the scope of the mayor. Again, it would be my opinion, and I would advocate for that. But again, it's tough a lot of times for government to kind of wield over the individuals, and so property values have gone up. And so if you're an older resident in this town and you own a piece of property, you will realize more for your property than you've ever imagined. If you're not going anywhere, then and you can still stay at your property, I would advocate not reassessing old properties. That my thoughts are this: that from a property standpoint, it gets reassessed at the transaction. So if a property is sold, obviously the value that it was sold at kind of indicates what it's worth as far as the value goes. I can't believe it's more complicated than that. But by the same token, if a property hasn't transacted, and again, we have a senior citizen and he or she has lived here for the last 50, 60 years, we're not looking to drive up their assessed value and have them pay double, triple the taxes that they're currently paying to increase our tax base. That's not right at all. And so we definitely have to advocate for putting like a lid on the assessments of existing, folks that have lived in their house for many years.
So we received numerous questions about infrastructure. That was one of the topics we received the most questions about. So I'm just sort of combining all of those questions into one general question. And that question is, what are your plans to prioritize infrastructure improvements within the borough? Are there specific areas that you would focus on?
Again, outside of the scope of the mayor. I mean, yeah. So the mayor of Sharpsburg isn't like the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. That the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh gets involved in budget proposals and things like that. The mayor of Sharpsburg can veto the budget, and that happens very rarely. If I honestly can't remember when that has happened last, but we talk about infrastructure, absolutely, from an advocate standpoint. And again, we get back to the budget, the $3 million budget, and trying to live within it and not raise everybody's taxes. And so when you do that, and we've been able to do that, you're kind of moving maybe at a pace that maybe isn't at the pace that everybody wants to see as far as new streets and things like that go. I mean, as far as new roads or new streets, there's no proposals. There's nothing like that as far as creating any new roads in or out of Sharpsburg. I mean, I think right now we just need to come up with being able to maintain maybe at a better clip, like this year's resurfacing project. we did not get done anywhere close to the goal that we had for resurfacing the streets. And so, people are upset. People on council are upset. And not everybody's on the same page as far as priorities go. That's what happens when you have a limited budget. But all we can do is try to find other government assistance. We have the ability to use liquid fuels tax for our infrastructure with streets and whatnot. And so any other programs, funding, and that's one of the roles of our borough manager, is to be seeking all the opportunities that we could possibly get in the way of funding, whether it's the county, the state, the federal, and so we need to continue with that, maybe do a better job with that.
It's hard to choose just one area to focus on. I'll do a few. We've been lucky to get a bunch of grants with the help of our borough manager, Bill Rossi, to completely replace all the playground infrastructure. That should be happening, I think, in the next year, depending on how fast we can get contractors out. But continuously improving these public spaces is hugely important. Looking at the topic of stormwater infrastructure, very, very important to me, especially, I've been in my basement in 90-degree weather, power out, shoveling crap out of my basement and shoveling water out of the basement. It's traumatizing, and I know how many of you out there have dealt with that, and I don't want another Sharpsburg family to have to deal with that. So stormwater retention infrastructure, both in town, but even more importantly, uphill, working with our neighboring governments to get that infrastructure up there so that the stormwater is held up there before it even gets to us and our basements and our foundations. That's critical. And then mobility infrastructure. We want the bike ped trail, of course, on the riverfront, but even the simple things like being able to travel around town in a wheelchair without having to ride in the street with cars. That's critical. That's a human right, being able to travel outside of your home. So that's important to me. Doing a joint purchase program, I think, on sidewalks will be very helpful for residents who need to fix their sidewalks but don't have the funds. And I want to get creative with solutions like that.
Our next question relates to addiction, drugs, and mental health. And as the mayor oversees the police department, we're inserting that specific detail into this question. So it's from the form submission, but slightly altered to fit the purview of the mayor. So if you were mayor, how would you ensure the police take drug complaints seriously? Our form submission person writes that they had multiple complaints that went unanswered, and ultimately the dealer across the street from them died from an overdose because of that. How would you ensure that the police took these calls seriously while also ensuring that those who are facing addiction or mental health issues are being treated fairly by the police?
Wow, I am so sorry that anyone in town has had that experience, and regretfully, I'm thinking it's not the only time that something like that has happened to somebody here. I think a lot of us in Sharpsburg and even in the region know somebody who's touched by addiction, if not have lost somebody to addiction. So this is a very important topic for us. We do have overdoses. We've seen during the pandemic our overdose numbers go up as I talk with the police chief as it is now, and some of the officers. So of course, access to services is huge. But me personally, this is something I take it as an extreme interest in. I care about the person, and I want to know what's going on with people. I want to know what's bothering them, what's hurting them, what's causing them to engage in these behaviors. So it would be my commitment to be following up with our police officers on a case-by-case basis with people to figure out what's going on and to try and rectify those issues and help connect those people to services to the extent that I can. And I'd want to follow up with residents who reported. I'd want the residents to follow up with me so that if they feel that they are not being addressed, that I can step in and make sure that happens.
I have directly contacted agencies outside of the Sharpsburg police to come in and help us and assist us, not so much with drugs and whatnot, but another situation that we had down on Main Street with a business, and was successful with that as far as getting an investigation opened and started. And while nothing from a criminal standpoint resulted, I think just by the nature of the investigation, it forced that business out of Sharpsburg, and we're not dealing with with a massage parlor being open at 10 o'clock at night. There's legitimate massage parlors open at 10 o'clock at night. But anyway, so when you deal with investigate, I mean, a lot of times a resident may be contacting the police on someone and it's already known and there's an active investigation. Unfortunately, you can't discuss that. You can't discuss open investigations. I mean, they're private, and the integrity of the investigation would be compromised if it was discussed. So that's happening, okay, in some of these instances. And if it's not, then we do need maybe a better dialogue with the mayor's office. And now that you bring it up, that would be something that I definitely would be up for, and that would be you bring your complaint to the mayor, and follow up with the mayor, and have some type of open dialogue there. But that's a tough one. It truly is, because again, you cannot comment on current investigations.
All right. So as I was saying, we have time for 2 more questions. They're both going to be on the topic of cooperation. And our first question comes from the form submission, and they are asking, how will you work together with council if elected as mayor?
I mean, I think part of working with council is letting council be council. The people on council were elected by the residents of Sharpsburg. So you have to let council be council. Now, I don't see me as the mayor as far as, dictating to council anything, as opposed to, and again, a lot of this is fluid. We're talking about things that are going to be happening in the future, not things that are happening now, because I'm not the mayor right now. But, I think being open to expressing my thoughts to council, continually, as opposed to maybe just out of, maybe blindsiding council at a council meeting, and so maybe communicating before the meeting, this is my thoughts on this topic coming up. Just like residents, like when residents send us letters and send the council letters on, hey, this is my feelings about this topic. I think the mayor needs to do that with the council ahead of time. So, we meet once a month formally. Now, granted, there's sunshine laws and we can't get together ahead of time in forms, and I get that. But we can communicate, though, without violating any sunshine laws. You can voice your opinion as an individual to the group without violating any type of information acts or things like that. And so I think maybe that's something that I would definitely want to do as our mayor is make sure that, before council met, that they knew 100% where my head was.
I love all these questions. I love that everyone's participating. And I think that's one of the most exciting things that changes that I've seen from when I first got here to now is so many more people are engaged in the process and paying attention. I'm happy for people to vote and participate, even if it's not for me, just participate and have your voice heard. And that's a huge win in my book. Cooperation and collaboration with council is going to be critical. I think similarly to how I work now, it'll be a lot of, hey, I found out about this opportunity. I did some research on it. What do you all think? Here it is. And then discussion will happen. And that's how governance happens in a good and healthy way. We don't agree on everything, nor should we. I think it's healthy when there's disagreements up on council. But that doesn't mean you can't be constructive in your dialogue. So if we can agree on what the problems are, even if we don't necessarily agree on what the solutions are, I think that's a good first step. And I'd want to just keep the dialogue going as I have as council president and as a council person. Everybody's a human with priorities and viewpoints, but together we can accomplish a lot if we just try to keep talking.
And our last question, to what degree should boroughs retain autonomy, and when should they collaborate with other boroughs such as the tri-borough entity?
Well, I think there's so much value in local government and in connections that people are able to make when they live in a small town with a very accessible local government. That's actually one of the great things about the stratification of municipalities in Allegheny County, about the sheer number of local governments here, is that somebody in Allegheny County, I read, is more likely to have contacted their local government official than pretty much anybody else in any other place in the country. So that's huge and so valuable in getting local issues addressed and feeling like you can trust that your local government person cares about you because they live down the street usually and you see them at the barbecue. But in issues of getting grants, for example, it's much more compelling to get a grant application from 2 or 3 communities working together on the same issue towards a shared vision than it is for one 3,400 person community to get a grant on something. And I'd say even more importantly on these issues that really don't know or respect municipal boundaries, things like air quality, mobility infrastructure that needs to move from one town to the next, and my favorite issue, stormwater management and flooding. We need to work with our neighbors, and we're doing ourselves a disservice if we don't work collaboratively with our neighbors. So to the extent that I can get better outcomes for our community and our residents by collaborating across the board, I'm going to do that. Yeah.
Again, when you say Triborough, I'm hearing Sharpsburg at Millville, and yeah, and so again, I'm not so certain that moving forward that is always going to be the collaborative other entities. You know, Wall is on the other side of us, yet they're not even mentioned. You know, so I think you know, who are we collaborating with? Also, maybe needs to reevaluate moving forward. When to do what? It's again kind of like a case by case situation, and we lent our big dump to Aetna. It then became destroyed. It was total. We had to buy another one. So were we going to need a dump immediately? Probably not. Eventually, sure. Vehicles don't last forever, and it was old. But nevertheless, sometimes that's one of the things that happens when you get involved with sharing. Again, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't foreseen. Accidents are called accidents because they're unforeseeable. But nevertheless, it happened. So you got to watch. But I don't know if there is a definitive answer on when to be alone and when to join the group. Again, I think it's more of a case-by-case basis.
Well, there were many topics that we wished to cover. That is about all the time that we have. Each candidate now has 2 minutes to tell voters why they should choose them in the voting booth on Tuesday, May 18th. Candidates, this is your final pitch to voters. We'll be going in reverse alphabetical order this time, beginning with Mr. Simbari.
So I think my 55 years here in the community definitely has some weight. And I do know pretty much every square inch of this town. And I think that's only going to benefit us. Also, me living in Allegheny County with the relationships that I've made in other communities and helping Sharpsburg move forward, I think it's invaluable. But, just having time doesn't qualify you or make you the best candidate. But being committed to the town does. And, I'm not looking to be a one-termer. I'm not looking for this to be my moment to shine in the spotlight so I can move beyond Sharpsburg into a paying career job. I have a career. I have a job. I lose this. It's not going to affect me economically at all, nor my economic future. Okay. I'm looking to be your mayor and to be the best advocate for Sharpsburg moving forward. But I'm not looking to spotlight myself. I'm not looking for this to be a footnote in a political career with a paying job. That's not my motive here at all for being the mayor. It's to be your mayor of Sharpsburg and to keep. Right now we are experiencing some of the best changes that this town has ever seen. But we can't be taken advantage of during these changes, and we do need a leader that's going to be out front and informing you, if nothing else, because the mayor doesn't, as I said throughout this whole evening, I've said, the mayor doesn't have maybe the powers that you think the mayor has. Okay. A lot of that's with the council. The mayor can inform you. The mayor can keep you informed and let you know what's going on. So together with the mayor, we can be a voice and make sure that this town is not taken advantage of by all the changes and the things that are happening in this town. And then lastly, obviously, the police force, and the mayor is in charge of that police force. And when we have, and I said it earlier tonight, when we have a police force that knows the community, and the community knows the police force, then we have an environment of mutual respect. And in an environment of mutual respect, then you don't have crises, and then we don't have to worry about marching and letting everybody know that everybody's welcome, because everybody is welcome. Okay, and everybody should feel safe in their homes and in their community. And that'll happen when we have mutual respect between those two. So that's what I'm all about. If you're with me, vote for me. If you're not, if what I said tonight doesn't make any sense to you, don't vote for me. I'm not your person. Okay, I am not your guy. But if everything I said makes sense, then join me on May 18th. If you already voted, hopefully you voted for me. If you haven't and you're going to mail it in, maybe tonight and hearing some of these answers will make you change your mind.
Well, everyone, I appreciate you paying attention so much that you're watching a YouTube video of a mayoral forum for a local race. We don't have a ton of voter participation here, so you even voting is huge. I am so in love with this community and all the characters I've met here, the businesses I've worked with to bring in and open up their shops here. The stories I've heard about Sharpsburg of old, and all the great things that the traditions that we can keep on perpetuating and treasuring. The history here is just so powerful and so unique, and I love the community. I think I've done a lot of good in terms of bringing in grants and projects and organizing residents around positive volunteer activities, but I want to keep doing more. I have learned a lot in my education, but I've also learned a lot in my work in volunteering with the Congress of Neighboring Communities, which is a almost 40 community collaboration between local governments, talking about everything from public safety, emergency services, infrastructure, utilities, green infrastructure, all of that. This is my calling in life, and I've been so honored to serve this community. So whatever way the election goes, I'm still going to be here busting my butt trying to work for you all and make it a better place to live, because I'm not going anywhere, and I want it to be the best community that it can be. And I think we all know how special this place is and how great it can be for all of us. So thank you all for your consideration, and thanks for living here.
I want to thank both candidates for participating this evening. Mr. Simbari, Ms. Reno, thank you. And finally, thank you to residents of the borough of Sharpsburg, whether you submitted a question or are watching tonight or at a later date. Remember to vote on Tuesday, May 18th. Good night and good luck to our candidates.